The story of the ascension of Horus as Pharaoh of Egypt is an epic tale of familial violence, betrayal, and has inspired many different tales throughout human history. Films, books, music, and television are all inspired by this epic story. But what is the story of Horus and Seth? Find out as we look into the contendings of Horus and Seth and ask, what the f***? Okay, I can get through this. I can do this. I've done worse. I can do this. Okay. This story is known for being a major inspiration for a lot of different stories, such as Macbeth and The Lion King. After hearing about it, though, you'll never look at The Lion King the same ever again. You see, our tale begins in ancient Egypt, during a time that Egypt was considered at peace and prosperous. So long as you ignore the disease, starvation, famine, and social divide, but don't worry about all that. The reason for all this peace and prosperity was that Egypt was under the rule of Osiris and his sister wife. No, not like this. More like this. Which deserves its own episode one day. But for now, we have bigger issues to dredge through. Anyway, Osiris's brother, Seth, was your basis for Scar at this point. He wanted to be Pharaoh, and the only thing keeping him from that role is the current Pharaoh, his brother, Osiris. So, Seth kills Osiris, cuts up his body, and spreads the pieces throughout Egypt. Isis then decided to collect all the body parts and basically duct tape them back all together using bandaging. I would love to be able to say that she did this out of loving devotion for her husband, but the truth of the matter is she was just really, really horny. And she just really, really needed the D. Like bad. And of course you're married, you can't bone anybody except for your husband, so... Osiris returning to life and becoming the god of the dead was more of a happy accident. You know what else was a happy accident? This guy. Our boy, Horus. I have no idea why it took so long for Seth to call this meeting, or if Egyptian babies matured in the matter of minutes. But when Seth went to a tribunal of the head Egyptian gods known as the Ennead to demand that he be named Pharaoh, Horus showed up and said, "Nah, I'm Pharaoh." Thoth, the god of wisdom, and Shu, the god of air, both agreed that Horus was the son of Osiris and had the right to the role. Ra, on the other hand, disagreed, saying that Seth was the stronger of the two. Seth said, "Yeah, dude, I could whoop this punk ass in my sleep." Horus said, "Come at me, bro." So Seth, the strongest and best warrior in all of Egypt, challenged Horus to a breath-holding contest. That's right. These two ancient heroes are willing to decide the fate of all Egypt with a game that you used to play in the community pool. You used to play in the community pool, right? Because you held your breath underwater to see how long you... Yeah, anyway. Seth, Horus, Thoth, and Isis went out to the Nile River. Seth and Horus transformed into hippos and sank to the bottom of the river. Isis obviously had no faith in her son's abilities and had crafted a copper harpoon, which she then threw into the river. Isis is a terrible shot, though, because it hit Horus right in the ass. Isis instantly yanked the harpoon out and tries again. This time, she hits Seth in the torso. I'm imagining at this point, Thoth is like a pro wrestling referee who sees this going on and basically just tosses the whole thing out just for outside interference, and so the belt basically goes to nobody. After his own mother stabs him in the ass, ruining his chances at being crowned pharaoh, Horus finally feels betrayed by the fact that Seth was able to appeal to Isis, as his sister, to remove the spear. Yeah, this definitely sounds like some WWE writing going on here. Who's the heel? Who's the face? What's the storyline? Who knows? Who cares? Either way, Horus comes out of the river, cuts his mom's head off in anger, and takes the head to the mountain to hide. Which is completely pointless because Thoth returns Isis's head to her body. Get used to this DC Comics retcon style thing because it happens a lot in Egyptian mythology. So cutting someone's head off must be hard work because Horus decides to go take a nap on the mountain. Seth sees this as his chance to enact an evil scheme, so he straight up stabs out Horus's eyes. Oh no! What is our hero to do? There's no way that he could possibly... Hathor the cow god comes along and pours milk on his face, and suddenly he has eyes again. This whole section of the story happens in the matter of about 10 minutes in this world. So what's the point? Who knows? Who cares? Move on. So realizing that this is getting way too heavy, the Ennead forced Set and Horus to shake hands and make up. Or else they'll shove them in the get-along shirt. What? What, you guys didn't grow up with a get-along shirt? You know, whenever your kids and you and your sibling are like fighting constantly, and your mom takes this huge shirt and just like shoves it over you, and you have to basically just like stay in it until you're good. I'm not the only one who's had that, right? Please tell me I'm not the only one who's had that. So Set took this moment to enact his next nefarious scheme. Now, at this point, I want you to understand that to the ancient Egyptians, gay sex wasn't such a big deal. It was just seen as a form of domination from one man to plow another. Set got the great idea of how to humiliate Horus in front of the Ennead. Something else to keep in mind, Set is Horus's uncle. Set tried to come up with this idea of being this big, massive schemer and being so much more crafty than everybody else, but he just winds up becoming that uncle. You know the one that I'm talking about. During the ceasefire that was supposed to be on, Set snuck into Horus's room while the kid was asleep and was fully ready to fuck his nephew in the butt. Horus, who knew better than to trust his creepy uncle, put his hand behind his back and covered his butt. What came from this is Set thinking that he had assaulted his nephew, but had only gotten a handy from Horus. The next morning, Horus goes to Isis and says, "Hey mom, look at this!" and shows his mom, because Isis is his mom, his handful of his own uncle's spunk. Isis, Horus's mother, then shrieks in horror and cuts off Horus's hand. A bit much, if you ask me. She then takes her son's ice-glazed hand and throws it into the river. I'm pretty sure that you noticed that within that last paragraph, I mentioned Isis being Horus's mom probably about 4 times. That's because what comes next is just fucked. I want you to understand just how fucked up this is. It's not just, the normal everyday family fucked up. I mean, I'm talking like Pornhub levels of fucked up, because ISIS basically says to complete this game.
Okay, listen. I have a plan to deal with this.
Okay.
It's gonna be a bit controversial.
Okay.
I'm going to use my hand to, gather your seed in this bowl.
Mom, I don't think that's a...
Give me that nut! Ah!
So she takes the bowl and heads out into the farming fields. Now, everybody knows that Seth has a daily habit of going out into the fields and eating vegetables for breakfast. I feel like I should make a joke about how weird that is, but given everything else I've had to tell you about this story, this fact is probably the tamest thing that's ever going to happen. Once out there, Isis takes the bowl of spooge and throws it all over the lettuce. Later that day, the tribunal had a meeting with Seth and Horus to deal with the situation. During that meeting, Seth stood up and proudly announced, "I fucked my nephew in the butt." Thoth, his head in his hands, at the idea that Egypt could possibly be ruled by a creeper that fucks his own nephew, asked, "Is there any proof?"
You should totally call out to my sperm and see where it answers from.
Fine. Sperm of Seth, where the hell are you?
Hey, we're over here in the river.
Wait, what?
Hey, why don't you see where mine is?
Fucking Christ.
So Thoth does just that, and Horus's cum calls out of Seth's stomach. Thoth commanded the sperm to come out of Seth's ear, and the sperm said, "Nah, I'm too good for that." So it came out, busting out the top of Seth's skull in the shape of a silver disc. Thoth then says to himself,
Hey, that makes a killer hat.
He then takes the disc and places it on his own head, and as if that's not fucking weird at all. The Ennead eventually figures out that this shit is never going to end. So Thoth, Ra, and Shu went to the previous pharaoh, Osiris. In between being used as an undead dildo and the current situation, Osiris had the honor of becoming god of the dead thrust upon him. So when Thoth, Ra, and Shu showed up, brought him up to speed, and asked his opinion, Osiris said, "If you don't pick my son, I'm going to raise every dead body in Egypt and take over the city myself." With that, the Ennead crowned Horus as Pharaoh of Egypt. So Horus ruled Egypt until his death at the hands, or tail, of a scorpion named Uhat. Still, Horus went on to become god of the sky and patron of Lower Egypt. Set was banished to the deserts outside of Egypt, which eventually made him the patron of Upper Egypt. He actually wound up being a pretty stand-up guy after losing the crown to Horus. He was the god of deserts, storms, foreigners, disorder, and violence, but he also became Ra's personal bodyguard. Set still kept up his scheming ways, but pretty much played more of a Loki role in the pantheon. Or more like Vegeta. Isis continued being a horn dog, and Ra sporadically merged with half the population of Egypt to become Amun-Ra. So I guess everything worked out for somebody? Thoth, probably. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you really liked this episode, and if you did, please like and subscribe. Ring that bell so that you won't miss the next episode of History 10 What the Fuck. Also, if you'd like to learn a little bit more about just how messed up Egyptian mythology is, be sure to tune in to the episode of Podcast 101 What the Fuck, where we go more in depth into that. Good night, everybody. I need a drink.